As motor journalists, we always talk about how consumers are spoiled for choice. But even consumers themselves are talking about how there's just too many cars, there's too much stuff to choose from. But today, we're not really helping the situation, are we? Because we've got this thing here.
Indeed. We sometimes like to think that we are the arbiters of good sense, but I mean, as models like this Mercedes-Benz GLC Coupe prove, there's an audience for this kind of thing. So let's take a look. All right, well, here we are in the GLC Coupe. Now, Mercedes-Benz says it's the sports car and SUVs, but is it?
Well, okay, the background to me being introduced to the first variant of this car, I drove the normal GLC, I drove a 300.
Yeah.
And that car was box standard. So I got into it and I was like, what's the point of all of this? But I think what impresses me is that now we've got fancy seats, we've got all sorts of spec in the car. So it does feel much sportier, I must say. I personally like the way it drives. I'm gonna leave you that guy. I know you don't like it that much, but I like the way it drives, first and foremost.
All right, well, look, I mean, I guess it does have a semi-sporty sensation, especially since it's so, cramped and confined, adds to that illusion of sportiness. I mean, our shoulders are like
Touch it. Yeah, that's fair.
Anyway, I just personally, I think it feels sort of stodgy.
Okay.
That's how I describe the experience. It's a heavy car, you know, and all these pretenses about being athletic and agile, I think it's just a bit of marketing speak, really.
Yeah.
To be honest, I feel a BMW X4 is a bit more authentic as a sporty sports activity coupe.
That's true, because I find the BMs have always got dynamics right, and they're slightly more simpler cars, whereas even in this car, it's so dolled up. I feel like sometimes they are trying a little bit too hard to impress us. I mean, I look at the inside of this car, it looks very fancy, but if you scratch beneath the surface, you'll see that some of these materials that look very fancy aren't actually very fancy.
That's
I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
I agree with you. No, there's definitely a veneer of quality to this car, but it is comfortable.
It is, and that's the one thing that I'm glad that has stuck to the Mercedes ethos, is that it is a comfortable car for like a quiet road like this. Even going on a long drive, I would enjoy myself in this vehicle, I'm not going to lie. I don't know how the guys in the back would cope though, because they've got the slanted roof compared to the normal GLC.
Exactly.
So, I mean, even if I was to sit in the back, I'm 5'7", so I don't think it would make that much of a difference.
You can't wear a hat, that's for sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
But looking at tech, one thing I must note about this is the infotainment system. I always find Mercedes-Benz infotainment systems very complicated to use, because it's got that touchpad thing, and to get into certain menus and all that, it's either you're touching or you're rolling, and this thing is kind of like merged to each other. It's a bit confusing. I don't know how you feel about the way this infotainment system works.
It's certainly not in the league of iDrive. I mean, you can't really operate this thing on the go. But like we said, comfort. And at the end of the day, I think, this is just a cruiser. A really fashionable cruiser. That's what this car is.
That's the thing.
I do wish they had done a bit more on the inside though, because I mean, this is exactly how it is on a C-Class.
Yes,
and
the floating
this thing is
screen.
expensive. How much does this car cost?
You won't tell me about how expensive this thing is.
Okay, we'll talk about it later, but it's not cheap. That's for sure.
But like is it how? Like,
it's
okay.
We'll talk about it later. Okay, so I mean, we can agree that it's fairly pleasant, but nothing remarkable.
Yeah. Again, it does the job, and you said something that's very important. It's fashionable.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, people say sex sells, and with the car world, fashionable sells. Because the first thing, people look at this thing and they're gonna want it. It's gonna jump out at you, and you're gonna want to actually look at it and sit inside it. So from that perspective, I think it ticks that box. And maybe that's the whole process that Mercedes is going when it comes to these new vehicles that they've come out with, is that they're talking to the market. The market wants fashionable, they want glam. So from that perspective, you can understand why people are buying a lot of new Mercs now.
For sure. I mean, clever of Mercedes to pander to the heart.
Exactly. So when it comes to engines, of course, you know, we're going to get this car in a petrol, and you also get it in diesel. And in typical Mercedes fashion, you're going to get like the 220s, the 250s, and we're the 250 now. But more importantly is the 9-speed gearbox. It's almost like a plumber with too many tools.
Yeah, no.
Each time I want to
Absolutely
like overtake,
Yeah.
it doesn't know. Like second,
Yeah.
third, second, third, and it's in comfort. It just gets a little bit confused. But when it's in sport, it's got that much more eagerness. It's got that much more purpose to. You feel like, you know, you can really use the car in different kind of scenarios. So in a weird way, I'd keep it in sport, but keeping it in sport as well means more fuel consumption. So I don't know how much of a good thing that will be in the end.
That's not ideal. So I mean, if you want a bit more oomph, go for one of the bigger diesels or get that AMG. So Francisco, all things considered, is this Mercedes-Benz GLC Coupe worth the extra money?
Okay, as much as I like this car, I'm not gonna lie. 770,000 Rand. Come on. Come on. They are literally playing with us. That kind of price tag for this, I mean, it's a good car, but let's be honest, 770,000 Rand, and mind you, that's without the optional extras that you've got on this car.
Exactly. I mean, for perspective, a regular GLC costs about 650,000 Rand. So this is 100 grand extra, and I can't really fathom why, apart from the fact that it looks hotter. Maybe it's because it's got a signature from G. Daimler on the windscreen.
Ah, that must be it.
That
must be it.
Is it something we can recommend?
If you've got the money and you really like it, I mean, at the end of the day, these are want cars. You have to really want it to own it. And if you've got the money, it's your money. But hey, I'm not gonna lie, that price tag, it's a bit painful.
So basically, they've given the public a car that they don't need, but probably really want.
There we go.